Hey, what's up everyone? Hopefully everything is well. My name is Naam, and yes, today I'm going to be wearing scrubs in today's video. I feel like it's just fitting for today's topic. So recently the House did pass the HEROES Act, and inside that included bill, they did have a portion that included hazardous pay for essential workers. So in today's video, I want to do a deep dive in that specific portion of that bill. So if any of you guys seen my previous videos, I did discuss about the HEROES Fund before, which was the original hazardous pay proposal for essential workers. I also did do a video recently on Patriots Pay, which was Mitt Romney's proposal on giving bonuses to essential workers. There are millions of essential and frontline workers, so I feel like this portion of the bill would be applicable to many Americans. Ever since the proposal for the HEROES Fund, there's really not that much movement on it up until now, since it was basically injected into the recent HEROES Act. So they did have to make some changes to the original proposal, so it's not as big as it once was. So in this 1,800-page bill, I gathered up all the key highlights so you guys wouldn't have to read everything. So in a nutshell, in this pay portion of the bill, it will provide essential workers with a $13 an hour pay raise. So now let's talk about what everybody wants to know. Who is considered essential? I know that in my previous video I did talk about the HEROES Fund, and there was a lot of questions in the comments concerning about what type of occupations were considered essential or not. The truth of the matter is that the majority of occupations are considered essential. So to avoid confusion, in this bill they did elaborate more on who would be considered essential. So in a nutshell, essential work is defined as 1. Work that is performed during the pandemic. So number 2, work that is not performed while teleworking, which means that you're still able to work from home. So number 3, work that involves regular interaction with others or items handled by others. And number 4, work that is any of the 33 areas that this bill has listed. So since there is a long list of who's considered to be essential, I'll just name a few. Anyone who works in the healthcare industry, first responders, biomedical research, social work and public work, grocery workers, and restaurant workers. Also anyone who works in transportation, anyone who works in the food chain, from farmers all the way up to processing plants, maintenance work and cleaning, warehouse workers, educational workers, laundromats, and all employees of the US Postal Service. I felt like I covered the majority of people who were on this list, but even if I didn't mention your specific occupation, if you work during this pandemic and you have regular interaction with others or items that are handled by others, then most likely you are considered an essential worker. Alright, so now let's talk about how would this all work. For essential workers who are making under $200,000 a year, they are eligible up to $10,000 in pay bonuses. And for any highly compensated essential worker, which is basically any essential worker who is earning more than $200,000 a year, can get a maximum of $5,000 in premium pay. So to add to that, death benefits were also included. So similar to the initial HEROES Fund proposal, if an essential worker does develop symptoms of this illness, and unfortunately if they do pass away, the worker's next of kin will receive the remainder of the premium pay as a lump sum. For employees to get this pay raise, employers who are conducting essential work, they would have to apply for grants to receive this money to pass this down to their workers. So once an employer has received a grant for the premium pay, that money that they receive can cover the entire cost of the premium pay. So this also includes employers' payroll taxes. So if you guys are unfamiliar with what payroll taxes are, let me give you a few examples. These taxes include Medicare, federal unemployment tax, state and local employment taxes. So in any case that employer does not use all the money that they receive from grants for pay raises, the employer would have to return any unused funds back to the treasury. So depending on how much you get paid right now and how much is taken out of each individual paycheck, you should expect that much to be deducted from the $13 an hour pay raise. So for me, working as a registered nurse, about a third of my paycheck is taken out from taxes. So of course, all this includes payroll, federal, and state income taxes. So technically, you'll probably see more of an $8 to $10 pay raise after the government takes their cut. And also, your employer is not allowed to reduce your income since you will be receiving a pay raise. So if you're making $23 an hour, they can now reduce it to $10 and give you a $13 raise, which means that you're basically still making $23 an hour. The reason why they had to put this in there is that this prevents employers from paying their employees less, so they can pay less in payroll taxes while they're giving you the same amount of money. So now let's talk about when you may expect to receive this money. So after the employer receives a grant for the premium pay, they must begin dispersing the money within 3 days. And also, if this bill does get signed into law, it will allow for retroactive payments dating all the way back to January 27th up until 60 days after the pandemic. So as soon as the employer receives the grant, the employer is supposed to give their worker a lump sum on their next paycheck. So for example, if you've been working since the pandemic all the way back from January 27th, and you worked about 500 hours or so, you should be receiving $6,500 on the following paycheck once your employer receives the grant. The bill did say that if it is impossible for the employer to do so, they should do it no later than the second paycheck. To be completely honest, I'm not really sure how the employer would find it impossible since they are receiving a $10,000 grant and they should be able to disperse that money almost instantaneously. So in addition, if your employer does give you this premium pay, this would not be counted as income whenever you start receiving this money in the following 12 months. So if you're an individual who receives any type of government assistance, state assistance such as SNAP benefits or partial unemployment benefits, this pay raise would not affect those programs. On top of that, whenever you file your 2020 taxes, this would not affect your adjusted gross income, so this would have no effect on your tax bracket. So if you are an employer or an employee, just make sure you guys stay up to date with this bill if it does get passed into law, because just like SBA loans and PPP loans, they do run out. There is a portion of the bill that did say that within 30 days after dispersing all of the allocated funds for hazardous pay, the Secretary of the Treasury, he would have to submit a report to the committees of Congress to indicate the number of pending applications that would be rejected due to the lack of funds. So this means when the money's out, the employers who are too late to the party, they will miss out on paying their employees with this extra bonus. The bill did also set a provision for federal employees because under current law, federal workers can only get a maximum of 25% hazardous pay for exposure to hazardous substances. So when it's all said and done, it's going to cost roughly around $190 billion. So everything in this bill concerning hazardous pay for essential workers, this is all that you have to know. So I'm going to break this down just a little bit further to put some of my own perspective on this whole situation. Even though this bill is set to cost $190 billion, it's not going to be enough to cover all essential workers. Because I know it's kind of difficult to calculate how many essential workers are out there since there's such a long list. So according to the New York Times, there are roughly around 46 million essential workers. So in another article from the American Action Forum, they estimate there's roughly around 26 million essential workers. Either way that you look at it, if you were to give 46 million essential workers a $10,000 pay bonus, it would roughly cost around $460 billion. And if there were 26 million essential workers, that would roughly be around $260 billion. So the harsh reality is that not everyone that's considered essential will receive this money. This is probably the biggest problem that we see with SBA loans and the PPP loans. There is not enough funding for small businesses to receive this money. So that's why there's such a long wait list. Of course, a loan to keep a company afloat is different than a grant showing appreciation to essential workers. So aside from that, let's take a look at our neighbor upstairs, Canada, on how are they dealing with hazardous pay. So recently the Canadian Prime Minister, he announced a $4 billion plan to raise salaries of essential workers. Initially, it was just only for essential workers who made less than $2,500 a month. But recently, a spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office, they did say that they dropped the $2,500 rule just to better reflect the wide range of wages that are paid to essential workers. This would include individuals who work for long care facilities, frontline workers in hospitals, and people working in the food industry. However, in Canada, it will be up to each province and territory to determine who is exactly qualified for this wage increase. So regarding to stimulus and economic relief, Canada does move pretty fast compared to the United States. Some provinces, they already have started to have a plan to disperse the money. For example, Ontario has announced a $4 an hour raise for frontline workers. And in Saskatchewan, I think I'm saying that right, the government recently announced the employees that are making less than $2,500 a month while working, they will get a top-up $400 bonus per month for 16 weeks. Of course, when you take a look at Canada's hazardous pay, it's only going to cost them $4 billion. Meanwhile, in the US, it's going to cost almost about $190 billion. The hazard pay, according to the HEROES Act, they will be receiving roughly around $2,080 per month if they do qualify for the maximum amount, which is pretty generous compared to what Canada is providing. I do understand that Canada does have a smaller population, and it's probably easier to start sending this money out, but the US being a first world country, I still don't understand why it takes so long to make things happen. So instead of waiting for the US government to do something, there's already been some companies across the country that has been offering hazardous pay. Amazon, they did offer hazardous pay for warehouse workers all the way through the end of May. They have been paying warehouse and delivery workers an additional $2 an hour along with double overtime since mid-March. A spokesperson from Amazon, they did say that they viewed the extra pay as an incentive rather than hazardous pay. So Kroger, which is a major food grocery chain, they give their employees a $2 an hour wage increase, and they offer a one-time payment of $400 for full-time staff and $200 for part-time staff. Rite Aid, Walgreens, and CVS, they had all have given pay bonuses and hourly increases as well. It is pretty great to see a lot of companies out there that are actually doing wonderful things to help their frontline workers. So since the House did pass the bill, we're basically waiting to see on how the Senate will respond to it. So most Republican senators, they have described this bill as dead upon arrival. Mitch McConnell, which is the Senate House leader, he said that this is just another big laundry list of pet priorities. Some Senate Republicans, such as Roy Blunt, which is a Republican from Missouri, he said that the Senate would begin serious talks about another stimulus after the recess. And the recess most likely means May 25th, which is Memorial Day. So possibly within the next 2 weeks, we may hear whether or not this bill will get passed up to the president. Alright guys, so that pretty much does it for me. If you guys haven't already, make sure you give this video a like because that really helps support the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you want to hang out with me some more, check out my videos over here.